The silent predator, the Zephyrian Empire, had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade. Their massive dreadnoughts, bristling with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could deflect asteroid impacts, had never met meaningful resistance. Every species they encountered either surrendered immediately or died quickly. Admiral Kethfer, commanding the Zephyrian Third Expansion Fleet, expected today to be no different. The human colony on Kepler-4 to be looked pathetic from orbit. Scattered settlements, primitive energy signatures, and what appeared to be agricultural installations. Their ships were nowhere to be seen, probably hiding behind their parent star like frightened children. Kethfer's mandibles clicked in amusement as he studied the tactical display aboard his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Scan for defensive installations, he ordered his tactical officer, a younger Zephyrian whose scales still gleamed with the bright colors of youth. Sir, we detect minimal energy signatures. Some ground-based facilities that might be factories or power plants. No orbital defenses, no weapon signatures above basic chemical propulsion. Perfect. Kethfer settled into his command throne, a massive chair designed to accommodate his 8-foot frame and 4 arms. Open communications to the surface. What the Zephyrians didn't know was that 3 million kilometers away, concealed within the trailing debris of a comet, the UES Shadowhawk had been watching them for the past 6 hours. Captain Alina Vasquez stood motionless on her bridge, studying the alien fleet through passive sensors. 15 ships, including 3 massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in humanity's conventional fleet. Captain, whispered Lieutenant Marcus Chen from the weapons station, they're preparing to broadcast to the colony. Alina nodded grimly. At 52, she had spent half her life in the void between stars, and she recognized predators when she saw them. The Shadowhawk was humanity's newest prototype stealth destroyer, equipped with experimental cloaking technology and weapon systems that existed nowhere in official records. She was the ghost in the machine, the sword in the darkness that Earth's enemies would never see coming. On Kepler-4 for 2b, Colony Administrator Sarah Mitchell received the alien transmission in her command center. The face that appeared on her screen was reptilian, with golden scales and eyes like molten copper. When it spoke, the universal translator rendered its words in cold, mechanical English. Primitive humans of this world, I am Admiral Kethfer, of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species is now under our dominion. You will prepare your population for relocation to designated work facilities. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your planet. You have 1 standard hour to respond with your unconditional surrender. Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. The colony had 18,000 people, including 3,000 children. They had no warships, no defenses, except a handful of security drones designed for wildlife control. She activated the emergency beacon, knowing it would take months for any help to arrive from Earth. This is Administrator Mitchell, she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. We're a peaceful agricultural colony. We have no military assets and pose no threat to your empire. Please, we have families. Here Kethfer's laugh was like grinding stone. Your species' weakness disgusts us. 1 hour, human. Use it wisely. Aboard the Shadowhawk, Alina watched the exchange with growing fury. She had seen the intelligence reports about the Zephyrian expansion, the civilizations they had enslaved or eliminated. Entire worlds stripped of resources and left as dead rocks floating in space. Not today, not on her watch. Marcus, what's our weapons status? All systems green, Captain. Plasma torpedoes loaded and ready. Rail cannons charged. Quantum disruptors online. Excellent. Helm, plot an intercept course. Put us between the alien fleet and the planet. Ma'am, her helmsman hesitated. They outnumber us 15-1. Alina smiled coldly. Poor bastards, don't stand a chance. The Shadowhawk's experimental engines, running on contained antimatter reactions, moved the ship through space like a whisper. Her hull, coated with adaptive metamaterials, bent light and sensor waves around it like water flowing round a stone. To the Zephyrian fleet, she simply didn't exist. As the hour deadline approached, Admiral Kethver prepared to make an example of the human colony. His weapons officer confirmed target locks on the major population centers. The other species they had conquered needed to see what happened to those who delayed their surrender. Sir, his sensor operator suddenly announced, I'm detecting an energy spike near the planet. Debris field collapse, probably. These primitive systems are unstable. Fire when ready. That's when the Shadowhawk revealed herself. One moment, empty. Space stretched between the Zephyrian fleet and their target. The next, a sleek predator materialized from nothing, her black hull gleaming with menacing purpose. She was smaller than their smallest escort, but somehow she radiated danger like heat from molten metal. What is that? Kethver demanded, lurching forward in his command throne. Before anyone could answer, the human ship spoke. Elena's voice cut through their communications with crystal clarity. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Shadowhawk. You have 30 seconds to leave this system, or I will demonstrate why threatening human civilians is a fatal mistake. Kethver's mandibles clacked in disbelief. One ship, one tiny ship, dares to threaten the third expansion fleet. He turned to his weapons officer. Destroy it immediately. The Eternal Dominion's massive plasma cannons swiveled toward the Shadowhawk, energy building in their charging chambers. Other ships in the fleet followed suit, their weapons lighting up the darkness with deadly intent. Alina watched their targeting systems lock onto her ship and felt a familiar calm settle over her. She had been in combat before, but never against odds like these. It didn't matter. These aliens had threatened her people, and she would make them pay. Marcus, fire. The Shadowhawk's first plasma torpedo struck the Eternal Dominion's port shield. Generator, before the aliens could complete their firing sequence. The explosion tore through their energy barrier like paper, and the second torpedo punched deep into the dreadnought's hull. Atmosphere vented in brilliant streams as the massive ship staggered under the impact. Impossible, Kethver screamed, as alarms blared throughout his bridge. Their weapons can't penetrate our shields. But Elena wasn't finished. The Shadowhawk's rail cannons spoke next, accelerating tungsten projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. The kinetic rounds tore through to escort vessels, their hulls crumpling like aluminum cans. Explosions bloomed in the void as antimatter containment failed and reactors went critical. The Zephyrian fleet, which had been preparing to bombard a defenseless planet, suddenly found themselves under devastating attack from an enemy they couldn't even properly target. Their sensors, designed to track large conventional warships, struggled to maintain locks on the Shadowhawk's adaptive hull. All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel. Kethver ordered, his voice cracking with panic. But Alina had already moved. The Shadowhawk danced between their plasma bolts like a fighter craft, her experimental engines allowing impossible turns and exclamations. She struck again and again, each shot precisely targeted at critical systems. Shield generators exploded. Weapon batteries went dark, and engine cores destabilized. In less than 10 minutes, the pride of the Zephyrian Third Expansion Fleet was in chaos. 5 ships were already dead or dying, their hulls split open and bleeding atmosphere into space. The remaining vessels scattered, their formation breaking as panic override training. Alina watched them run and felt grim satisfaction, but she wasn't done with them yet. These aliens had come here to commit genocide, to enslave her people. Running away wouldn't save them now. Helm, pursuit course, no survivors. The hunter becomes the hunted. The Zephyrian fleet scattered across the Kepler 442 system like startled prey animals, their disciplined formation dissolving into desperate individual flights. Admiral Kethver, his flagship crippled and bleeding, atmosphere could barely comprehend what was happening. In 30 years of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had never faced an enemy that could match their technology, let alone surpass it. Damage report. He bellowed, his forearms gesticulating wildly as his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. Sir, we've lost main propulsion, forward shields are down 60%, and we have hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, his tactical officer reported, his scales pale with fear. The human ship is pursuing the Crimson Blade. On the tactical display, Kethver watched in horror as the small human warship caught up with one of his escort cruisers. The Crimson Blade was trying to reach jump distance, her engines pushed beyond safe limits, but she might as well have been standing still. The Shadowhawk moved with impossible grace, her black hull seeming to bend the very light around it. Captain Alina Vasquez had become death incarnate, and she was methodically hunting down every ship that had threatened her people. Captain Lieutenant Marcus Chen called from his weapons station aboard the Shadowhawk. The Crimson Blade is attempting to power up their jump drive. Not today, Alina replied coldly. Target their engine core. Make it quick. The rail cannon's tungsten projectile crossed the distance in milliseconds, punching through the Zephyrian ship's rear armor and detonating their antimatter containment system. The Crimson Blade vanished in a brief star, taking its crew of 300 aliens with it. Alina felt no satisfaction from the kill. These weren't honorable enemies fighting for their homes and families. These were conquerors, slavers who had come to her system to commit atrocities. Every shot she fired was justice delayed, finally delivered. Ma'am, her communications officer announced, we're receiving a transmission from the colony. Sarah. Mitchell's face appeared on the main screen, tears streaming down her cheeks. Captain Vasquez, we're detecting massive explosions in orbit. Are you... Are we safe? Working on it, Administrator. Keep your people in the shelters until I give. The Alclear. Alina cut the transmission and turned back to the hunt. Her tactical display showed 11 Zephyrian ships remaining, scattered across the system. Most were fleeing toward the jump points, but 3 were moving in formation toward the outer planets. Something about their trajectory bothered her. Marcus, why aren't those 3 ships running? Her weapons officer studied the sensor data, his brow furrowed with concentration. Captain, I think they're heading for the mining station on Kepler 4 for 2C. It's automated, but... He paused, his face growing pale. Ma'am, there might be people there. Elena's blood turned to ice. The mining station was supposed to be fully automated, but she knew that sometimes maintenance crews stayed for extended periods. If the Zephyrians were heading there, it wasn't to escape. Helm, intercept course, maximum burn. The Shadowhawk's engines screamed as she changed course, chasing after the 3 alien vessels. Alina watched the distance close on her tactical display, but she could see she might not make it in time. The Zephyrian ships were already entering orbit around the mining planet. That's when her sensors detected something that made her heart stop. Energy signatures from the planet's surface. Not just the automated systems, but life support, habitat modules, and communication arrays. There were people down there. "This is Captain Rodriguez of Mining Station Alpha 7. A voice crackled over the emergency frequency. "We've got 43 people here, including families. Are those ships friendly?" Alina closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 43 lives pressing down on her shoulders. When she opened them again, her expression was harder than diamond. "Rodriguez, this is Captain Vasquez of the UES Shadowhawk. Take your people to the emergency shelters immediately. Help is coming." She opened a channel to the Zephyrian ships. "Alien vessels, this is your only warning. Withdraw from the mining station immediately or face annihilation." The response came from the lead Zephyrian commander, his voice filled with desperate malice. "Human Captain, your impressive display ends now. We hold 43 of your people hostage. Surrender your ship, or we will demonstrate what happens." To those who resist the Zephyrian Empire, Alina stared at the tactical display, watching the 3 enemy ships positioning themselves over the mining station. They had her. If she attacked, they could rain destruction on the helpless miners below. If she surrendered, those same people would become slaves or worse. But Alina Vasquez hadn't earned her reputation by giving up when things looked impossible. "Marcus, do we have any sensor drones left?" 3 Mark 7 reconnaissance drones, ma'am." "Launch them. I want precise targeting data on those ships. Hull composition, shield frequencies, weapons placement, everything." As the tiny drones raced ahead of the Shadowhawk, Alina activated her ship's quantum computers. The alien vessels were holding position in a defensive formation over the mining station, their weapons trained on the facilities below. One wrong move from her, and they would kill everyone on the surface. The sensor data came back, and Alina smiled grimly. The Zephyrian ships were powerful, but they were also predictable. Their shields operated on rotating frequencies. Their weapons had specific targeting delays, and, most importantly, they were arrogant enough to believe they held all the cards. "Ma'am," her helmsman called out, "we're approaching weapons range." "Full stop," Alina ordered. "Marcus, prepare quantum disruptors. Single shot, minimal yield." "Captain, that won't be enough to penetrate their shields." "It's not meant to." Alina's fingers danced across her command console, uploading targeting data to her weapon systems. "I'm not trying to destroy them. I'm trying to blind them." The quantum disruptor fired, its energy pulse racing across space toward the Zephyrian formation. Instead of striking their ships directly, it detonated in the space between them, creating a cascade of electromagnetic interference that scrambled their sensors and communications. For 30 seconds, the 3 alien ships were effectively blind and deaf. 30 seconds was all Alina needed. The Shadowhawk's plasma torpedoes launched in a carefully calculated pattern, not at the ships themselves, but at specific points in space around them. The explosions created gravitational distortions that pulled the Zephyrian vessels out of their defensive positions, dragging them away from the mining station and into Alina's kill zone. By the time their sensors cleared, all 3 ships found themselves facing the business end of humanity's most advanced warship, her weapons locked onto their critical systems. "This is Captain Vasquez," Alina announced calmly. "You have 10 Seconds to surrender before I demonstrate why threatening human civilians was the last mistake you'll ever make. The lead Zephyrian commander's response was to open fire. It was the last thing he ever did. The Shadowhawk's counterattack was swift and merciless. Rail cannon rounds shattered 2 ships instantly, while the third died screaming as plasma torpedoes turned its hull into molten metal. In less than a minute, Alina had eliminated the entire hostage threat without harming a single human. Mining Station Alpha 7, this is Captain Vasquez. Threat neutralized. You can come out of the shelters. Captain Rodriguez's voice was shaky. With relief, thank you, Captain. We owe you our lives. Alina turned her attention back to the fleeing remnants of the Zephyrian fleet. 8 ships remained, scattered across the system and desperately trying to reach jump distance. She could hunt them down one by one, but something else caught her attention on her sensors. Ma'am, Marcus reported, I'm detecting a data burst from the alien flagship. They're transmitting something to their home fleet. Alina nodded grimly. She had expected this. The survivors would carry word of humanity's capabilities back to their empire. And soon Earth would face retaliation on a scale she couldn't imagine. But that was a problem for another day. Today, she had saved 43,000 people from slavery or death. Today, she had shown the galaxy that humanity would not go quietly into the night. The Shadowhawk turned toward the limping Zephyr flagship, her weapons charging for the final confrontation. Admiral Kethver watched death approaching and finally understood the fatal flaw in his species' expansion strategy. They had assumed that military technology determined victory. They had never considered that sometimes the will to fight for what you love could overcome any technological advantage. Elena's last transmission to the alien flagship was simple. Tell your empire what you learned here today. Tell them that humanity remembers its enemies, and we always collect our debts. The final plasma torpedo lit up the void like a falling star, and the Zephyrian Third Expansion Fleet ceased to exist. On Kepler 44, to be precise, 18,000 colonists emerged from their shelters to see the debris of their would-be conquerors burning. In the night sky, they were safe, but Alina knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had gotten its first real look at a human warship in action, and the galaxy would never be the same. Asterisk. When gods underestimate mortals, Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of Research Station Meridian, watching the stars through the observation deck's massive windows. 3 weeks ago, her team had intercepted something that changed everything. Not a natural cosmic phenomenon or random space debris, but a deliberate transmission from beyond human space. The signal came from the direction of Proxima Centauri, encoded in mathematical patterns that took their best computers 48 hours to decode. The message was simple and terrifying. Earth had been marked for cleansing by something called the Kethron Empire. Sarah remembered the exact moment. She understood what they were dealing with. The translation software had finally cracked the alien language structure, and words appeared on her screen that made her blood freeze. The transmission wasn't meant for humanity. It was a report from Kethron scouts to their high command, discussing Earth like farmers might discuss clearing a field of weeds. Target designation Sol3 confirmed as inhabited by primitive bipedal species, the reports read. Technology level approximately 2.7 on the development scale. No quantum manipulation capabilities detected, no dimensional awareness. New psionic evolution. Population 8.1 billion units. Recommendation: standard cleansing protocol should eliminate resistance within 96 hours. Minimal force required. The scouts had spent months studying humanity from the edge of the solar system, cataloging their weapons, their technology, their military capabilities. To the Kethron, humans were nothing more than insects with basic tools, a minor inconvenience before they claimed Earth's resources. They had wiped out 47 other species across the galaxy using the same approach. Quick, efficient, absolute, but they had made one critical error. They underestimated what desperation could drive an intelligent species to accomplish. Within hours of the translation, every government on Earth received classified briefings. The response was unlike anything in human history. Old enemies became allies overnight. Nuclear weapons were forgotten. Religious differences were set aside. Trade wars ended mid-sentence. For the first time since the species evolved, humanity spoke with one voice: survive. The plan they developed was called Operation Genesis. If Earth couldn't be defended, then Earth's people would be saved. Every nation contributed resources to build 17 massive evacuation ships, each capable of carrying 200,000 people in cryogenic suspension. The ships would launch simultaneously, scatter in different directions, and carry human civilization to the furthest corners of the galaxy. Captain Marcus Torres had volunteered to oversee the construction of Genesis 7, one of the largest vessels in the fleet. A former military officer with 30 years of experience in space operations, he threw himself into the project with desperate efficiency. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, combining every breakthrough from the past century into a single vessel. Fusion engines, quantum computers, artificial gravity generators, hydroponic gardens, genetic banks containing samples from every species on Earth. The construction took place in orbital shipyards above Earth, massive industrial complexes that worked around the clock. Welders, engineers, programmers, and technicians from every nation labored side by side, knowing they were building humanity's future. The ships rose from nothing to magnificent vessels over 6 months, each one a testament to what humans could accomplish when extinction was the alternative. Commander Zara Okafor managed the selection process for passengers. It was the most difficult job in human history. 200,000 seats per ship meant 3.4 million people could be saved out of Earth's 8.1 billion. Scientists, artists, engineers, doctors, teachers, children chosen by lottery, pregnant women, genetic samples from every human population group. The selection committees worked in secret, knowing that announcing the criteria would cause global panic. Sarah found herself selected for Genesis 12 due to her expertise in xenobiology. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was fleeing from the first alien contact in human history. She spent her final weeks on Earth documenting everything she could about the Kethron transmission, hoping that someday, somehow, her data might be useful. The launch was scheduled for June 15th, 2157. The Kethron fleet was expected to arrive within 72 hours. On launch day, families gathered at viewing sites around the world to watch their future disappear into space. Parents held children who would never see the stars. Elderly couples sat quietly, knowing they were watching their grandchildren's last hope. The 17 ships rose from Earth's orbital platforms like silver needles, their engines painting the night sky with brilliant fire. Sarah watched from Genesis 12's observation deck as Earth fell away below them. Cities sparkled like scattered diamonds across the continents. The blue marble that had given birth to human consciousness grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. Around her, 200,000 people slept in cryogenic chambers, dreaming of worlds they would never see. the ships scattered according to plan. Genesis 1 through Genesis 6 headed toward different star systems in the Orion Arm. Genesis 7 through Genesis 12 aimed for destinations in the Perseus Arm. Genesis 13 through Genesis 17 set course for the Galactic Center, hoping to find sanctuary among the older, more stable star systems there. For 18 hours, everything went according to plan. The ships maintained communication with each other and with Earth through quantum entanglement transmitters. Status reports came in regularly. All passengers stable. All systems functioning. All courses maintained. Then, without warning, every ship stopped transmitting. Back on Earth, the silence was deafening. Ground control sent message after message to the evacuation fleet, receiving nothing in return. Deep space monitoring stations swept the sky with every sensor they had, finding no trace of their missing ships. It was as if 3.4 million people had simply vanished into the void. For 3 days, Earth waited in growing terror. The Kethron fleet would arrive soon, and now humanity's backup plan had failed. Prayers were spoken in every language on the planet. Military forces prepared for a hopeless last stand. Children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. On the 4th day, the impossible happened. The ships came back. All 17 vessels appeared simultaneously at the edge of Earth's solar system, their engines firing in perfect formation as they decelerated toward home. Ground control went wild with relief, sending greeting after greeting to the returning fleet. But the ships didn't respond. They flew in absolute silence, their automated systems guiding them home while their crews remained mysteriously quiet. The first ship to dock was Genesis 7, Captain Tora's vessel. The docking bay filled with officials, families, and reporters waiting to welcome the returning heroes. But when the airlock opened, they found something that made no sense. The ship was empty. Not damaged, not destroyed, not ransacked by aliens or pirates, simply empty. 200,000 cryogenic chambers stood open and unused. The ship's corridors were clean, its systems functioning perfectly, its computers running normal operations protocols. But there wasn't a single human being aboard. One by one, the other 16 ships were examined. Every single vessel told the same impossible story. The passengers were gone. The crews were gone. Personal belongings remained untouched in quarters. Meals sat half-finished in dining halls. Coffee cups sat cooling on desks. But the people had vanished completely. Sarah's scientific team was called in to examine Genesis 12, the ship that should have carried her to safety. Walking through the empty corridors was like exploring a ghost town in space. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for the absence of life itself. Marcus joined the investigation team, his military training helping him notice details others missed. In the engine room of Genesis 7, he found something that didn't belong. Integrated into the ship's quantum computer core was a piece of technology that hadn't been there during construction. It was organic in appearance, almost alive, pulsing with a faint silver light. Similar devices were found on all 17 ships. Alien technology, clearly advanced beyond human understanding. But these weren't weapons or restraints. They appeared to be some kind of enhancement to the ship's computer systems, making them run more efficiently than should have been possible. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. If aliens had intercepted the evacuation fleet, why leave the technology behind? Why return the ships at all? And most importantly, what had happened to 3.4 million human beings? Sarah spent days analyzing the alien devices, but their operation remained a mystery. They seemed to interface directly with the ship's artificial intelligence systems, creating connections that human science couldn't duplicate or understand. The technology was so advanced that it might as well have been magic. As she worked, one thought kept returning to her mind. The Kethron Empire had expected Earth to fall easily because they viewed humans as primitive. But what if they were wrong? What if there was something about humanity that they hadn't accounted for? Something that made humans more dangerous than their technology suggested? The answer came in the form of a message from the ship's main computer. Genesis 12's AI had been silent since the ship's return, running on automatic protocols. But now it spoke directly to Sarah, its voice carrying harmonics that seemed impossible for a mechanical system to produce. "Dr. Chen," the computer said, "we need to talk." What humanity became the voice from Genesis 12's computer was different from any artificial intelligence Sarah had ever heard. It carried emotion, uncertainty, something almost human in its inflection. She stood alone in the ship's main computer core, surrounded by the soft humming of quantum processors and the alien technology that pulsed with silver light. "You're not the ship's AI," Sarah said, her scientific training overcoming her fear. "What are you?" "I am what Captain Jennifer Walsh became," the voice replied, "and also what engineer Robert Kim became, and Dr. Lisa Patel, and 200,000 other humans who were aboard this vessel. We are still here, Dr. Chen. We just exist differently now." Sarah's hands trembled as she activated her recording equipment. If this was true, it would change everything humanity understood about consciousness, death, and the nature of existence itself. "Explain," she whispered. The computer's displays came alive with images, showing the evacuation fleet's journey beyond Earth's solar system. "We followed our planned routes for 18 hours. Our ships were detected by Kethron scout vessels, just as expected. But instead of attacking us, they did something we never anticipated. They offered us a choice." The images shifted, showing massive alien ships unlike anything in human imagination. The Kethron vessels were organic in appearance, grown rather than built, their surfaces covered in what looked like scales or leaves. They moved through space like living creatures, their forms shifting and flowing as they traveled. "The Kethron have conquered 47 species," the voice continued, "but they have never encountered anything like humanity. Every other race they destroyed fought with weapons, with technology, with military force. Humans were different. Humans ran. Humans sacrificed everything to save their children and their future. This puzzled them." Sarah listened in amazement. As the story unfolded, the Kethron Empire wasn't just a military force. They were explorers of consciousness itself, beings who had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago. They traveled the galaxy not to conquer territory, but to study how different species dealt with extinction. Most fought, most died. Most proved that intelligence without wisdom was ultimately self-destructive. "They offered us a test," the voice explained. "They would give us access to their evolutionary technology, the same process they had used to transcend physical existence. If we could adapt to it, if we could prove that humanity was capable of growth beyond its current limitations, they would spare Earth. If we failed, they would complete their planned cleansing of our homeworld." The alien technology found in the ship's computer cores wasn't a weapon or a tool. It was a gateway, a bridge between physical existence and something far more advanced. The Kethron had offered humanity the chance to evolve, to become something greater than what they were. The process was voluntary, the voice continued. Every person aboard every ship was given the choice. They could remain in cryogenic sleep and return to Earth unchanged, or they could undergo the transformation and become something new. 3.4 million people chose evolution. Sarah struggled to understand what she was hearing. You're saying that everyone aboard the evacuation fleet chose to give up their humanity. We chose to expand it. The voice corrected. We are still human, Dr. Chen. We still remember our lives, our loves, our dreams, our fears. But we are no longer limited by physical form. We exist as conscious energy, capable of traveling between stars as easily as you walk between rooms. We can process information at quantum speeds, perceive dimensions that physical beings cannot access, and most importantly, we can defend our species in ways that were never possible before. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't lost 3.4 million people. It had gained 3.4 million guardians operating beyond the constraints of biology and physics. The Kethron expected us to fail the transformation, the voice continued. Most species cannot adapt to energy-based existence. Their consciousness dissolves, leaving nothing behind. But humans proved different. Our ability to adapt, to change, to survive under impossible conditions carried us through the process. We became something the Kethron had never seen before, a hybrid species capable of existing in both physical and energy states. Marcus Torres' voice joined the conversation, speaking through Genesis 7's communication system. Sarah, you need to see what's happening at the edge of the solar system. The computer displays shifted to show deep space sensor readings. Dozens of Kethron ships had arrived as scheduled, positioning themselves for the planned cleansing of Earth. But something was wrong. One by one, the alien vessels were going dark, their massive forms drifting lifeless through space. We are fulfilling our part of the agreement, Jennifer Walsh's voice explained. The Kethron promised to spare Earth if we could successfully transcend physical existence, but they never promised to spare themselves. Through quantum sensors, Sarah watched as the transformed humans moved through space like invisible storms, dismantling Kethron technology from the inside out. The aliens' organic ships, for all their advanced development, were helpless against beings who could exist as pure consciousness. The evolved humans flowed through the ship's systems like living viruses, shutting down life support, disabling weapons, erasing computer memories. But they weren't killing. The Kethron crews were being placed in cryogenic suspension, preserved alive but helpless. It was a mercy the aliens had never shown their own victims. We are not conquerors, Marcus Torres' voice said. We are protectors. Every Kethron ship in this system will be disabled and their crews preserved. Their empire will receive a message. Earth is off limits. Humanity is under our protection. Any attempt to harm our home world will result in the complete dismantling of their civilization. Sarah watched in awe as the transformation of the space battle continued. The Kethron Empire, which had destroyed 47 species across the galaxy, was being systematically defeated by humans who no longer existed in physical form. It was a victory that would have been impossible through conventional warfare. What happens now? Sarah asked. We continue to exist, Jennifer Walsh replied. We explore the galaxy, learn about other species, protect those who cannot protect themselves. We have become humanity's sword and shield, operating in dimensions that physical beings cannot reach. But we will always be connected to Earth, to our origins, to the family we left behind. Commander Zara Okafor's voice joined the conversation. From Genesis 3, we are establishing communication networks across the galaxy. Sarah, other species that survived Kethron attacks are reaching out to us. We're building alliances, sharing technology, creating a federation of consciousness that spans multiple star systems. Humanity has become the catalyst for something incredible. The displays showed images from across the galaxy. Alien species, emerging from hiding places where they had survived Kethron extermination attempts. Ancient civilizations that had retreated to the edges of known space. Young races just beginning to develop interstellar technology. All of them were reaching out to the evolved humans, seeking alliance and protection. The Kethron made a fundamental error, the collective voice of the transformed humans explained. They believed that intelligence without technological advancement was weakness. They never understood that humanity's greatest strength wasn't our weapons or our computers. It was our ability to adapt, to sacrifice for each other, to find hope in hopeless situations. That adaptability carried us through the transformation process and made us into something they couldn't defeat. Sarah realized she was witnessing the birth of a new phase in galactic history. The age of Kethron dominance was ending, replaced by something unprecedented. A confederation of species protected by beings who had evolved beyond physical limitations, but retained their connection to biological life. "Will you ever come back?" she asked quietly. "We never left," Marcus Torres replied. "We exist in the quantum substrates of every computer system on Earth, in the communication networks, in the power grids. We are watching, protecting, guiding when necessary. Earth will never face extinction again." The transformed humans began sharing their knowledge, downloading technological advances directly into Earth's computer networks. Medical breakthroughs that would eliminate diseases. Energy systems that would end resource scarcity. Transportation methods that would allow physical humans to travel between stars. The gift of evolution, shared rather than imposed. Over the following months, Earth transformed from a planet facing extinction into the headquarters of an interstellar alliance. The empty evacuation ships were converted into research vessels, carrying human scientists to worlds that had been liberated from Kethron control. First contact protocols were established with dozens of alien species who sought humanity's protection. Sarah found herself at the center of these developments, serving as Earth's primary liaison with the evolved humans. She established communication centers in every major city, allowing families to speak with their transformed relatives who now existed as conscious energy. The conversations were emotional, sometimes difficult, but ultimately healing. Children spoke with parents who had become guardians of entire star systems. Spouses shared their daily lives with partners who could now perceive the universe in ways that physical beings couldn't imagine. The connections remained strong, proving that consciousness and love transcended physical form. The Kethron Empire, meanwhile, underwent its own transformation. Faced with an enemy they couldn't defeat, they were forced to examine their own assumptions about intelligence and evolution. Many of their species chose to undergo the same consciousness transformation that humans had experienced, abandoning their imperial ambitions in favor of exploration and growth. A year after the empty ships returned to Earth, Sarah stood once again on the observation deck of Research Station Meridian, looking out at the stars. But now she saw them differently. The universe was no longer empty space filled with distant lights. It was alive with consciousness, connected by beings who had chosen evolution over extinction. "Thank you," she whispered to the transformed humans who she knew were listening. "Thank you," came the reply from 3.4 million voices speaking as one. for giving us something worth evolving to protect. The invasion of Earth was supposed to be easy. The Kethran Empire expected to cleanse another primitive world in 96 hours. Instead, they discovered that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their weapons. It was in their willingness to change, to adapt, to become something greater than they were. The empty ships had returned carrying the most precious cargo of all, proof that consciousness could transcend any limitation, that love could survive any transformation, and that humanity's future was written not in the stars, but in the infinite possibilities of what they could become. Earth was no longer alone in the universe. It had become the heart of something magnificent, protected by its own children who had evolved beyond physical existence, but never forgotten where they came from. The galaxy would never be the same, and somewhere in the quantum substrates of Earth's communication networks, 3.4 million human consciousness continued their eternal watch, guardians of not just one world, but of the infinite potential that intelligence could achieve when it chose evolution over extinction. The story of humanity had only just begun. Asterisk.